Hey everybody, Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com to talk about some of the most underrated matches in wrestling history. These are matches that have largely been forgotten about, either by fans or by the wrestling promotions, but matches that I feel and a lot of NoDQ.com visitors feel should be recognized more for being not only great matches, but having an impact on the wrestling industry. Let's start off with Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior from WrestleMania 7. One of my all-time favorite matches, but unfortunately, it's been overlooked. And I think it's been overlooked mostly by WWE because WWE hasn't been on good terms with either guy. So because of that, clips of this match are never shown, and it's kind of gotten lost in history. But this was a terrific match. This was I think, easily Ultimate Warrior's best match, and one of the most emotional matches of all time. It was a retirement stipulation, and of course, Savage ended up coming back. But at the time, with Elizabeth coming out at the end, and Randy and Elizabeth reuniting, and people crying in the crowd, it was something really special, and it was a feel-good moment at WrestleMania, and I just love the storytelling, and the quality of the match was very good considering Ultimate Warrior was in it. I mean, it was definitely one of the best matches of WWE during that period. British Bulldog versus Bret Hart from In Your House in December 1995. This match gets overlooked because everybody remembers the Bret Hart and British Bulldog match from SummerSlam 92. So people always talk about that one, and this one gets pushed aside and forgotten about, and also because it took place at In Your House. But it was an incredible match, and Bret Hart bled like crazy. It was a very physical match and a violent match. So, it was also a turning point when WWE was starting to move away from the whole cartoon aspect of it and going more in that Attitude Era direction. Shawn Michaels versus Mankind from Mind Games. Once again, it was at In Your House, and it wasn't one of those primary main events like at a SummerSlam or Survivor Series, so people tend to forget about it. But I mean, Mankind and Shawn Michaels tore the house down in that match, and it was in Philadelphia, and Shawn Michaels brought out a side of him that people hadn't seen, a more hardcore side, and it was a tremendous pay-per-view main event, and it holds up with any of the great matches in wrestling history, in my opinion. The Rock versus Triple H at SummerSlam 98 for the IC title. In my opinion, this was a groundbreaking match for both guys, but the thing is, they've had so many matches. Rock and Triple H have had dozens of matches, high-profile matches, and I think that this one gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, but in my opinion, this is arguably the best match that these two had, and I certainly felt that both guys were bigger stars when the match ended than when it began. Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart, the very first WWE ladder match. That's right. Everyone seems to think that the first WWE ladder match was Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon at WrestleMania, but that wasn't the case. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had a ladder match in 1992, and I think it ended up on a Coliseum home video, and later it ended up on a Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart DVD. But it was groundbreaking, and it was the first of its kind in WWE, and Shawn Michaels was taking all sorts of crazy bumps, and it was just a sign of things to come. So, I mean, it's definitely a match that I feel deserves more recognition. WCW has been looked at in a negative light by a lot of fans, but especially in 2000. But there was one match that year that really stood out, and that was Booker T versus Lance Storm for the WCW title. One thing that Vince Russo was doing right was pushing Lance Storm, and Lance Storm won all the titles, and it was actually really well done, and the crowd was buying into Lance Storm as a top heel. And they had this match on Nitro, which is a shame. They could have done this match on pay-per-view, but it was for free on Nitro, and it was a terrific match. And the thing about this match is the crowd was so into it. They were loving this match, and when Lance Storm put the Canadian Maple Leaf submission on Booker T, the crowd really thought that they were going to see a world title change. So, I mean, this match was, better than just about anything WCW produced that year, and possibly the highlight of that late WCW period. John Cena versus Edge from Unforgiven, the TLC match. I think that a lot of John Cena matches are overlooked because fans tend to look down on John Cena, and they're not a fan of his wrestling. But this was one of the best matches that WWE's produced in the past decade. It was in Toronto. It was Edge's hometown, so you had the crowd heat. But, the work was top-notch. John Cena and Edge going back and forth and taking all sorts of crazy bumps with the ladder and the tables and the chairs. It was great stuff. Here's one that I don't think a lot of people are going to remember. Triple H versus Taka Michinoku. Yes, Taka Michinoku. I'm not kidding here. This was on Raw in 2000. Triple H was the WWE champion. The thing about this match is that people actually thought that Taka was going to beat Triple H. It was actually a WWE title match. And the fans thought that Taka could actually beat Triple H. You watch that match, it's unbelievable. That's how good this was. And, people criticize Triple H. And some people call him overrated. But, you watch this match and, it's incredible how people were believing that Taka could beat him. So, this match, I think, is definitely one of the most underrated in WWE history, especially for world title matches. Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker from No Way Out 2006. A match that gets overlooked, partly because Kurt Angle left WWE and, they don't really show clips of this match, and it was also at a B pay-per-view. But it was really fantastic. I think it was definitely the best Kurt Angle and Undertaker match. And, it was surprising because Kurt Angle beat The Undertaker, and then that's something that doesn't usually happen. So, Angle beat Undertaker, and it was both guys were at the top of their game in this match. So, definitely one you should check out if you haven't seen it. Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper from WrestleMania 8. Perhaps the most underrated WrestleMania match of all time. Definitely one could argue that this match is one of the best that people don't talk about a lot. It was the last big match for Roddy Piper before he took a break from wrestling and became semi-retired. And it was really a critical match in Bret Hart's career because it put over Bret Hart as a potential main event superstar. Roddy Piper basically passed the torch to Bret in this match. And I love the story that they told here where Roddy Piper had the ring bell and he had the option to use it to cheat and win, but he chose not to do it. And then Bret Hart was able to take advantage of the situation and beat Piper. So I loved this match. I thought it was easily the best match of that WrestleMania and one of the best WWE matches of the early 90s. RVD versus Jeff Hardy from Invasion 2001. This was another really good match, very intense, lots of high flying, lots of cool spots in this match. But I think it's been overlooked by the whole big angle with Austin joining the Invasion and that whole thing. But certainly this was like the third match on the show. It was in the undercard, but it was a really great match. And here's a match that was definitely buried on SmackDown. The TLC match with the Fatal 4-Way TLC match. Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and Chris Jericho. Because it was on SmackDown randomly, I think a lot of people have forgotten about it. But, with those 8 guys in the ring, you can't do wrong. And it was one of the most spectacular matches that WWE's ever produced. And, it's just unfortunate that because it happened on SmackDown, a lot of people tend to forget about it. And here's a real gem. Bret Hart versus the 1-2-3 Kid in 1994. This was just a random match on Raw, but, people that remember this match remember it as being one of the best matches ever from any era. And I would agree with that. It was it was Bret Hart at his best, and 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's just tremendous in-ring action with these two, and a match that could have headlined a pay-per-view. I mean, it was that good. Owen Hart versus British Bulldog, the very first European title match. This was the finals of a tournament, and this was during a period when Nitro was red hot, and everyone was watching WCW, and this was a taped Raw also, and it was overseas, so it kind of got lost in the shuffle. But I mean, this was one of the best matches that I've ever seen. Period. I mean, this was. Both guys were just at the top of their games here, and I thought that it was one of the greatest matches ever, and it's just unfortunate that, like these other matches, it's gotten forgotten about because of its position, where it was just randomly on a Raw, and it was during a period when WWE wasn't all that hot. The Rock versus Chris Benoit from Fully Loaded 2000. Not only was this match underrated in my opinion, but I think that the whole Fully Loaded pay-per-view was one of the most underrated pay-per-views that WWE ever produced. And unfortunately, I think it's because of the whole Chris Benoit thing, his death, and WWE not wanting to show clips or matches of Chris Benoit whenever possible. But, I mean, this one, it was another great WWE title match, and it involved Chris Benoit. Sting versus DDP from Nitro in April 1999. I thought that this was one of the best matches in WCW history, and one of the best world title matches that they ever had. Everything that these two guys did gelled. They just worked so well together, and the crowd was red hot for this match. All the stars aligned here. But people forget about this match because it was when WCW was in their decline, and later on the same night, DDP just won back the title, so I felt that hurt the impact of Sting winning the title. But the match itself was tremendous. And next up, Goldberg versus DDP from Halloween Havoc 1998. This was another really good WCW World Title match that a lot of people didn't see because the pay-per-view got cut off. There was an issue with the cable companies, and people lost their feed, and it was a huge disaster for WCW, and they had to replay the match the next night on Nitro. So people look at that in a negative light, but that match was about as good a Goldberg match as you could ask for. Ric Flair versus Edge, TLC. When people think of great Ric Flair matches, they think of the matches with Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage. And Sting, but Ric Flair actually had a really great match with Edge on Raw in early 2006. I don't think that people expected it to be such a classic, but Ric Flair went out there and he proved he could still hang with the young guys. He was taking a lot of physical punishment. He was bleeding like crazy, and the match helped Edge. It helped elevate Edge to become a credible WWE champion. So I thought that this was a really, really good match, and I don't know if it gets enough recognition. And finally, one more match here: The Undertaker versus Jeff Hardy on Raw in 2002. It was also a TLC match, and this match is significant because it was The Undertaker turning face at the end. Jeff Hardy, the story here was that Jeff Hardy was the underdog, and he would not give up under any circumstances. He would keep fighting. And when the match was over, Undertaker had gained respect for Jeff Hardy for putting up this tremendous fight, and he helped up Jeff Hardy and raised his hand or shook his hand or whatever. And, it put over Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy got more out of losing this match than I think he would have winning. So that's something very rare, and it's another match that I don't see WWE playing clips of it a lot, but it was certainly a very memorable match, and a lot of people talk about it. So maybe it is underrated, but then again people do rate that match very highly. All right, that'll do it for my thoughts on the most underrated matches in wrestling history. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment on youtube.com/NoDQCAW, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest in WWE and TNA. Thanks for watching.